We talked with him just last week, but with everything that's going on, it seems like it's really been an eternity.
UW political science professor David Canon joining us today to break down a number of things going on. I guess we can start with that phone call. The governor was punked by a blogger out in New York. What ramifications does that have?
Well, I think there are probably two really negative things that came out of that phone call for the governor. The first was the sort of verification that, in fact, this is about busting unions and not about balancing the budget, because he had the part of the phone call where he compares himself to Ronald Reagan, the air traffic controllers, and said, this is our moment, this is our time to change history. Well, balancing a budget isn't changing history. You know, getting rid of the public employee unions would be changing history, and that's indeed what Ronald Reagan did with air traffic controllers. So I think that admission, basically, in this phone call, finally makes public what everyone's been saying in private, for a long time, that really is what the agenda is here. And so I think that's probably the most significant thing to come out of this. The second that was sort of troubling was the part where the blogger posing as David Koch says, what can I do to help here? Can we get some people in there to stir up some trouble? And Governor Walker, to his credits, talks him out of that, but he says, kind of shockingly, yeah, well, we considered that. And the fact that the governor had even talked about, bringing in people to stir up the protesters and cause trouble, and that I think was also kind of a shocking statement.
We keep hearing the word recall, recalling the governor, state lawmakers. What has to happen in order for that to actually even take place?
So it's a fairly involved process. First of all, anyone who's being recalled has to have been in office for a year. And so for the governor, that process can't start for another 10 months or from January. And so in order to recall someone, you have to get the signatures of 25% of the people who voted in the gubernatorial election. So for the governor, starting this in a little less than a year, that would mean getting over 500,000 signatures on the recall petition to get that recall election set up. Now, for state senators, we've heard a lot about recalling both the Democrats who are in Illinois and maybe some of the Republicans, because half of them were elected 2 years ago, not in 2010. And so the recall for them can start now, and there it's the same provision, 25% of the voters in their district who voted in the governor's race. So on average, that's about 16,000 voters, per district, and they have to be people from that district to sign the recall petition. And then once you have those 16,000 signatures, then the recall election will be held 6 weeks after that. Those petitions are filed.
The governor, though, he has big-name backers. I mean, for one, the former Arkansas Governor Huckabee has let him know to hang tough and hang in there, and we're all watching you as Republican lawmakers. And
right. Oh, absolutely. And the governor, is definitely hanging tough. It was a bad 24 hours for him with this thing about the prank phone call, but in his press conference yesterday, he said, we're not going to let this distract us. We're moving ahead, and he's made it very clear that he still wants to push ahead with this budget repair bill, and he's hoping just a bump in the road.
You know what? I think the one thing, they crisis management, jumping on it right away. He had a news conference at 2:30. From their point of view, that was probably the right thing to do. Absolutely. No, you don't want to let something like this fester for a long time, because more and more talk gets out there, and the people in the blogosphere and the protesters would be even more riled up by this. And so I think this was the right thing to do, to respond right away. How this is going to play out, though, in public opinion remains to be seen.
Is there any hope for a compromise on behalf of the governor?
Well, the State Journal ran an editorial again this morning, saying that they still back the Schultz compromise, which is this idea that you give the governor what he wants for 2 years, then you sunset that, and you bring the collective bargaining rights back after that 2-year budget is completed and the budget is balanced. I think that still is probably the best hope for a compromise. If you can get a few Republican senators to go along with that, and the Democrats who are in Illinois right now come along with that, that might be the best bet for a compromise at this point.
You got to think there are some Republican lawmakers who are afraid of this and don't want to sign on to this proposal.
Well, right. Yeah, especially when you have people like the head of the Wisconsin municipalities, the head of the school board association, both saying, hey, we didn't even want to get rid of collective bargaining. Yeah, we wanted to change it, but we didn't want to get rid of it. This is the management side basically saying, we didn't ask for this. And so you would think that would make some of the Republican senators say, well, let's find some middle ground here. We might be able to work out a compromise.
All right. Professor, thank you very much for joining us this morning.
You're welcome.
We'll see you again soon, I'm sure.
All right.